Good morning. Here are the last bit of notes that I want to do on interest groups. Uh, Interest groups can interact with the government and the population in many different ways, but what we're going to focus on today mostly is lobbying and litigation. We'll talk about political action committees or PACs in a different small set of notes. So, in terms of lobbying, there are a couple of different things that interest groups can do to meet with individuals, to educate the public, to do a bunch of things to make people care about their issue or issues. So, direct lobbying is the first thing that we'll talk about. And this is the group trying to influence public policy through direct contact with government officials. So, this is when the group will hire a lobbyist, someone who knows how to meet with members of Congress, has rapport with members of Congress, all of those different things. And they're going to try and sit down and have meetings with them, right? They'll have a lunch with members of Congress. They will, give a prepared presentation to a government official about the issue at hand, what the group really cares about. Second kind of lobbying is creating education campaigns. So either you have a group who will hire a lobbyist to meet with members of Congress, and typically interest groups will do that no matter what, right? In a world where they have to worry about building the agenda and finding allies in Congress to work on what they want, then an education campaign is something that will help put additional pressure on members of Congress. I'm sorry, I forgot to take my pills. So, lobbying meets with just a government official. Education campaigns will find a way to educate the public about an issue through things like advocacy advertisements, and the goal will be to make the public care about the issue and ultimately reach out to members of Congress as well. So you've got your lobbyist who can reach out to the government, but then you also have the public who will reach out and do things, right? You can publish studies, you can put together commercials, but the goal will be to put out the results, to put out the findings that will support, what the group believes in. The goal may be to create grassroots lobbying. When we talk about grassroots movements, right, we are talking about things that come from the ground and work their way up, right? These are movements that come from actions of the public. So if the people feel educated, they will feel more willing to reach out and contact members of the government, right? So they could do things like petition drives, like physically signing petitions in places, virtually, right? We've talked about places like change.org, uh, different government websites that may have petition drives on them, right? So that becomes very effective with Congress. Or now, you can get people to call their members of Congress, or more organized interest groups with a good technological infrastructure will have um, like email campaigns where all you have to do is fill out a form and it emails all of the relevant representatives who represent you at the local, state, or national level. This is a good way to get the attention, because if there's one thing that members of Congress fear, it's their constituents. It's the people who they represent, that when you reach out to them, they're going to feel more compelled to act, especially if they're getting a large number of items shared with them. Marches and demonstrations become another movement or another type of grassroots movement or lobbying that can be effective. And we see marches and demonstrations all the time that have, mixed bag of effects. We can talk about the movement for, or the marches for Black Lives, or Black Lives Matter, have those demonstrations, have those rallies and whatnot, created effective change in some areas more than others. So these all become effective ways to get the attention of the government because they see the people working together for a common policy end. Education campaigns, like I said, are a way to get the public motivated, to get to grassroots lobbying, to get to grassroots movements. And it's enough to hope that the public will demand for government action. Advocacy advertisements are specific ads or attempts to educate that promote the group's political views. And if you look in the notes that are shared with you on Classroom, you should be able to watch these videos. I don't know how well Screencastify will like capture a video that I'm showing, so you may have seen some of these. These were the Gillette commercials that started questioning toxic masculinity, that had a great degree of like, people both celebrating the message of the ad, but then you also had people like criticizing Gillette for trying to hop on, to like the coattails of the Me Too movement to criticize toxic masculinity so they could like be fake woke. In terms of like criticizing them for that action. This is a Dove commercial that criticizes beauty products, and there are oh, it's not going to let me do it. So there are two doors that that women walk up to in like all kinds of buildings all over the world, and it was like, are you beautiful or are you normal? And then there's a conversation at the end with each of them as to why they chose the doors that they did. Right, so it's a traditional critique of what we believe is beautiful, and then at the end it's like, buy our product. So these are examples of that kind of stuff. And then this is a commercial that I'm guessing that you all have probably seen before. It's the Energy Voters commercial that still pops up from time to time because we have, oil and natural gas industries in the state of Kansas. We get some of this where it's like, I support jobs. I want to fight the terrorists. I want a strong economy. I'm an energy voter. And it's paid for by the oil and gas lobby. So these can be different ways to get a message out there that sometimes they call for political action, sometimes they don't. And then that's John Oliver making fun of the American Petroleum Institute. There are two other types of lobbying. There's AstroTurf lobbying and civil disobedience. So AstroTurf lobbying, creating the distinction between grassroots lobbying and AstroTurf, which is fake grass, is difficult at times because it's right. If there's a group with deep financial pockets trying to get a grassroots movement going, then it's labeled as AstroTurf. But if the goal of education campaigns and advocacy advertisements are to get people to do something, then maybe all grassroots movements that are connected to an interest group are AstroTurf. It's really hard to create that distinction. Sometimes people point to things like if corporations compel their staff to like attend some sort of rally or like being filmed in a commercial and those kinds of things, like you'll see those cited as AstroTurf. Uh, Here's a very good TED talk on how AstroTurf lobbying can be used in conjunction with the media to manipulate the way we think. Uh, if you're into TED Talks, then you can find this. It's about 2/3 of the way down the presentation. If you're not interested because you don't like TED Talks, then boo. The last type of lobbying is civil disobedience, and it's the practice of breaking the law to pressure legislators to create change, right? So, think of the civil rights movement where if the bus laws, the lunch counter laws, all of the stuff that said, like black folks can't sit here, black folks have to go somewhere else, right? So when there were sit-ins at lunch counters, when black folks pack the bus in Montgomery, right, those become ways of openly breaking the law, and the goal is to put pressure on the government to change those laws, right? Some of you in either junior English or AP Lang may have had to read part of Thoreau's Civil Disobedience, and that's written after he spends some time in jail for voting while refusing to pay his poll tax. So the goal is to not just like burn everything down, but it's to break the laws that you believe are unjust. And if there's like a court clog, if there's a mass incarceration over a particular law, that may force the government to rethink its position. If interest groups are not successful in lobbying change in Congress, then the last strategy they can use is litigation. So if you lose with Congress, then you can sue, right? You can file a lawsuit to challenge a law. You can find a lawsuit that exists already, and you can like hop on to that lawsuit and file, a brief that we'll talk about. But it's a last action in a continuing cycle, right? So if you can't succeed in a legislative body, then you take action in the judicial body, shampoo, rinse, repeat. Um, so here, amicus curiae briefs are something that they can do if there's an existing lawsuit that exists. An amicus curiae brief literally means friend of the court. So if there is a lawsuit that does not directly involve an interest group, but the interest group believes that they can write a legal brief to submit to the court, persuading the court members in terms of a interpretation of the law or the Constitution in one way or the other, then they will do those things. And when we talk about civil rights and civil liberties at the end of the semester, we will look at how interest groups have been both successful and failed in that arena as well, in terms of issuing challenges to the court or free riding on other lawsuits that already exist to get something that they want out into the ether. So that is the meat and potatoes of what the last couple of things you need to know about interest groups. If you've got any other questions, let me know, but we'll talk about some of this influence stuff that you see here on a slide when we compare interest groups and political parties a little bit